Good afternoon, everybody. We do have a quorum now, thanks to the best dress just came in.
Finally got somebody else convinced how to dress?
We are, on the agenda next time, we're gonna have a dress code discussion. Because our
Please do.
vice chair. All right.
We all get to dress like them? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's what we have to discuss. I don't care.
From Hawaii.
Feels pretty good.
Yeah, right.
Test, test. There we go. All right, we're live. Okay, so we're a few minutes late, 3:07, calling the order the Wichita Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, known as WAMPO, for the policy body meeting, June 12th, 2018. Thank you all for being here. You all have an agenda in front of you. And I don't know if we have any new welcomes we need to make first. I think everybody's good. So we're calling the meeting to order for sure. So the approval of the June 12th, which is today's agenda, you all had a chance to read it. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Annie.
Second.
Thank you, Donna. Moved and seconded to approve the agenda today. Any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item B, the approval of the May 8th, our last meeting. We have the minutes in front of you if you had a chance to review. Any questions, comments, corrections? Being none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks, Dan. It's been motion approved. Any questions? Being none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Director's report, item C on your agenda.
We
Mr. Director.
provided several pieces of information in your agenda packet, but we'd like to kind of update some of the information in there. The first being the tip update. Kristen, I think she has a couple of slides to show you.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks, Phil. We just wanted to provide a brief update to you all on where things stand with the WAMPO funding cycle that's currently underway. So, as you can see, we just wrapped up the soliciting projects phase. Felt good to put a big check mark next to it, and we've moved on to the screening projects phase. We received a total of 17 applications during during that first phase. Those were totaled just about $25 million. We received applications from two types of projects. The first sort of category of projects are projects that are currently in our TIP, currently programmed to receive WAMPO funding in 2019 or 2020. That are requesting a little bit additional WAMPO funding because they've had a chance to get some updated cost estimates or there's been some slight change in the scope of the project. So we received 6 applications in that category, and then we received an additional 11 applications for projects that are in the second category of types of projects, and these are new projects. These are projects that are in our long-range plan in MOVE 2040, and that the applicant or the member jurisdiction decided they would like to move forward with in the years 2021 or 2022, that they'd like to move forward with construction with. So again, we received 11 applications in that category. So that brought us to a total of 17. Since then, we have had one applicant withdraw their application for additional WAMPO funding. There was just a small math error. So we've withdrawn that one, so we're down to 16. And again, as you can see here, we're currently in the screening process. That's where our staff is in the process of following up with the applicants and making sure, our main goal during this phase is to make sure all the materials are complete and ready for the selection committee to do their work next month. I do want to thank KDOT. They've been a big help during this phase. Their Bureau of Local Projects has volunteered to screen and look through all the applications and make sure to give us any heads up on things we want to pass along to the sponsors as we get ready to go into project development. So I want to thank them for that. And then the last thing I want to bring to your attention is really just a heads up a heads up that we are going to be opening a public comment opportunity on these these applications we received. We're shooting to get that open this week, and that will be an opportunity for members of the public to provide their comments to us on all of these different applications, projects we received. So we're excited to do this. This will be the first time that we provided a public comment opportunity in advance of these selection committee meetings. So we're very hopeful that we get whatever public comment we get, we can pass along and will be helpful to the selection committee and all of the decision-making bodies involved in this process. So, and on that note, I would ask your assistance if you're willing to pass along once the public comment period opens. We'd appreciate any help you could give us in passing that along to your constituents or groups that you work with that might be interested in this kind of thing. So that's all I had for the update. I'm glad to answer any questions. Yeah.
Kristen, thank you. 2 questions. Are these 16 projects, are they on our, on the website, the one that tracker, whatever?
No,
They're
it's
not?
not. No, those are only sort of the committed projects.
Okay, so the tracker site is just for projects that are ongoing.
That's right, that
That have
we've
been
made a
approved
commitment to,
and-
that
okay.
are official and approved and adopted by this board.
So your public comment, are the projects listed?
They will be, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, we're asking for, we'll have a little project sheet for each individual project and have pertinent information, the scope and that kind of thing on it.
Okay, my second question is, you mentioned thank you to KDOT, and you pointed to Tom, but
Well,
that's right. Anyway, I just want to make sure, so if has KDOT reviewed all 16 of them and say they are paperwork compliant?
They're in process. We're
Okay.
shooting for all that to get wrapped up at the end of this month.
And they will, if there's an error or if they need a correction, they will get it to you and you get it to the project submitter?
Yeah, and most of their information in the past, most of their comments have been helpful for the applicants to correct or address between now and when they officially go into the KDOT project development process. So they're helpful during that time, and then they're also helpful when the project sponsors working with their engineers during design. They point out a lot of good, helpful design-related comments.
And I think that's important for our policy body to know that it does take KDOT to look at these and say, okay, it's in compliance, you can go to the next step or whatever, so.
Yeah, and they generally provide really helpful comments that make the project even better and just a heads up on any red flags that might be an issue during the project development process.
At this point, it does not need to be okayed by the feds, just KDOT? KDOT works with feds? Okay, thank you.
Yep, that's part of the review, is looking for any eligibility issues.
Right.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Christine, for the update. We'll look forward to you posting that out there.
Sure thing, yeah. Yeah, we'll be sure to get an email out with all the project list, and also wanted to let this group know we're shooting to have monthly updates for you between now and when we'll ask you for action on the complete TIF. So I can see lots of excitement in the room already. Okay, well, good. Okay, well, the next item we wanted to give you a quick update on was I'd mentioned, we received 16 applications. 2 of those were from Wampo to be a Wampo-sponsored project. And so I'd like to invite Chris up here to talk about the first, and I'll be back to talk about the second.
Thank you. So the first project that Wampo submitted is looking at providing some assistance to our member jurisdictions in developing their projects for our next Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And I'll have plenty more on the Metropolitan Transportation Plan to talk to you about a little later. But for this project, just to steal a bit of my thunder from that, in about the middle of next year, Wampo will be opening up a call for projects for the MTP. So this is where new projects enter the pipeline to get Wampo funding. Right now, we're working on projects that were put in under Move 2040, our last long-range transportation plan. This will be the opportunity for projects to go in for the next next 20 years, starting in 2020 when this new MTP is adopted. And we're planning for that call for projects to be open for about 2 months. Now, we understand that that's not necessarily a huge amount of time to conceptualize and develop a project, particularly for some of our smaller jurisdictions that may not have in-house engineering resources. So what WAMPO is looking at doing is hiring ourselves some consultants and giving each member jurisdiction 100 hours of consultant time to help develop your projects. So the consultants could, for example, suggest possible projects, help you narrow down your list of projects, write good scopes and cost estimates, and address the project selection criteria, sort of make sure the project puts its best foot forward, has the best possible chance of getting funded. So we're doing this for a couple of reasons. One of the things is we do want to get projects that are responsive to these project selection criteria. We want to make sure there is a level playing field and equal opportunity for all of our project sponsors, regardless of size. And we want to make sure that we get projects that are really responsive to the MTP vision and outcomes and investment strategy. So sort of we start the MTP by developing these high-level vision for where transportation in our region is going. And as much as possible, we want the projects to reflect that high-level vision. So by giving our member jurisdictions some time and resources to develop projects and to meld their projects so they fit with this high-level vision, we're hoping that we can implement that vision more effectively. Now, the flip side of this, the obligations on project sponsors, we'd be asking them to pay the local match on this. So they would essentially get this consultant help for about 20 cents on the dollar, pay the 20% federal match, and also cover some things like the TP that helps fund WAMPO and a bit of administrative cost for WAMPO to administer this program. Depending on the bids we get for consultant time, we think that the total obligation for the project sponsor would be in the $2,000 to $3,000 range, which is pretty good for 100 hours of consultant help that would hopefully help you get, projects that potentially could bring your community several $1 million in federal funds. So we wanted to give you the heads up, both because you are the WAMPO policy body, and since this is a WAMPO project, we're sort of submitting this on your behalf, but also to let all you know as members of, as representatives of project sponsors of our member jurisdictions, that this opportunity would be coming down the line, and maybe to start your process of thinking about it and budgeting for next year, so you can take full advantage of this. And we'll be coming back and talking with you more as the MTP project selection process gets more solidified, but wanted to give you an advance heads up on this. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? So maybe I missed it. So the local match, the 62,000 is from the members that you?
Yes, it would come from the project sponsors. Each project sponsor who wants to take advantage of this would pay just the match on their 100 hours worth of consultant time.
What's the math? How much you charge an hour? I'm just,
Well,
attorney rates?
we based our estimates for this on what we've seen with our planning walkable places projects, the bids that the consultants put in on those. Obviously, we would have to see exactly what they come in with. I think we're assuming about $125 an hour for this, based on what we saw for planning walkable places.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, yeah. Ann?
So what are you thinking, like the time frame? Did I miss that?
Sure. So we're looking at the 2-month project solicitation period would be probably starting May of next year. We might we'll be doing the procurement for this, hiring the consultants earlier in the year, and we would probably open those consultant hours up to the member jurisdictions around the time we came out with the selection criteria, because we really do want, the projects to target the criteria.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
All right, I'll turn it back over to Kristen to talk about our other WAMPO project.
Thanks, Chris. Well, our second application is for another round of Planning Walkable Places grants. So many of you probably remember the first round was approved by this board just about a year ago. We ended up awarding 20 projects to 16 member communities. I think most of the folks sitting around the table were recipients of those grants. And so through talking with project managers, city staff, hearing comments from our TAC committee members and also from the board members, it seemed pretty clear that there was some additional demand for this kind of work. So we went through and did a survey, a demand survey of our current Planning Walkable Places grant recipients, the project managers in your individual cities, to see what kind of demand. And we found there was actually quite a bit of additional demand for this kind of work. As a reminder, this project funds hiring consultants to put together plans that help communities to improve the walkability within their entire community or within a specific sub area or district of their community. So during this current round, we did several bicycle and pedestrian plans for communities. We funded some district plans, doing some signage, wayfinding planning work. But anyway, so we found out there was quite a bit of additional demand. So in this application, we're requesting $500,000 in federal funding that would have an associated 20% match, which would be right up at $125,000 that the recipients would pay. Again, this is our request, our application into this process, and of course it'd be up to the selection committee to ultimately this board to make a decision on that. But we're proposing that it be run pretty much the same as it is currently, that we'd have a open to all WAMPO member jurisdictions, we'd have a competitive selection process, the final decision list of projects would be brought to this board for final action. And but we are proposing just two changes to how it's run now. The first is that we would use this upfront funding as opposed to the end of the year funding. Several of you that were involved in it last year probably remember the high degree of uncertainty that was posed to you, to our other decision-making bodies, to the applicants. It seemed to cause a lot of stress that we didn't know how much money we have and we wouldn't know how much we would get in applications. So we're hoping by requesting it up front, it would ease some of that uncertainty and that we would know going into it how much money we would have to award, and then the applicants can work from there, and there'd be a degree of certainty for this body in terms of how much money would be available to be spent on these kinds of projects.
You
And then
have
the
a
second
figure,
big change.
excuse me,
Oh, I'm
Chris.
sorry.
How much did we spend on that program last year?
It ended up being a total of 1.3 million. Yep.
And we're looking at another 600,000 with the match is 625,000 additional.
That's right. That's what the application's for. So we'll see, let it go through the process and see what comes out. And then the second big change is that we're working with KDOT to see if we can get some additional projects to be eligible for this type of funding. We've talked to many of the communities, and we know that there's demand for additional sorts of things that extend beyond just sort of the traditional planning process. So we know we can't pay for engineering, and we know we're not going to be able to pay for construction, but there are a few other things that are in between what we're doing now and the engineering point. So these are things like conceptual design plans, maybe fabrication and installation of signage, temporary installations of streetscapes or public spaces, safe routes to school coordinators, bike ped safety awareness programs and training, road safety assessments and audits. So these are the sorts of things we're talking to KDOT about to see if we could add to the list of eligible projects that might be helpful to cities as they're putting their ideas together to see if there'd be interest in this. So that's all I had on this. I'm glad to answer any questions anyone might have.
Okay. Any other questions?
Since Ranzel's not here, I might go his
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
funds to it. And so I would pose the question, is this something that we would want to divert funding away from a road project that might be as part of transportation? Start allocating money for it.
That'll be a great question too, that this application, I think, will have an opportunity to debate and answer that question ultimately. You know, we got these 16 applications. This is one of the 16, and the selection committee will have a chance to go through the process and make a decision on what they want to do with it, and ultimately it will come to this board to answer that very question. So,
Since we're talking about it now, though, if we don't think that this is appropriate use, it should happen now and not even make it to the selection committee, I would think. Right? I mean, we should say now, philosophically as a board, is this something we want to start working on or not? And if not, then we would probably knock this out right now so it never even takes the time up in the selection committee. So I guess I don't know how to approach that. Pete, but if you don't-
Kristen, are there project development timelines on this fund, or on these funds? The 33-month
there would be
for
some.
road projects?
Yes, but not as long. You know, the 33 months goes with a kind of a capital construction project. You know, we're probably talking, I don't know, 3 to 4 months
Right.
for development, for project development review process that KDOT, they'd really just want to read through the scope. Probably not even 3 months, maybe 2 to 3 months.
Troy, not knowing for sure, but this is a little bit of a preemptive get ready in case we have extra funds, that we didn't have to jump through hoops like last year.
So
No?
this is it, this is a
This is
request
it?
for to fund this project. I got it, Troy, I appreciate you bringing it up, because it was one thing when we had funds that we had to use. I am not comfortable starting down the road of dedicating funds to this. I mean, we had leftover funds that we needed to spend. I think there are other projects and construction issues that we need to address before we start funding consultants to tell us how to spend our money. And I understand that we had a need and a purpose, and we funded virtually everyone that came in last year, I think, but one. I don't want to get into that we're spending all our money on consulting fees instead of construction fees and that type of thing. That, you know, I understood last year, I think, you know, $1 million on that already is plenty, and I think we need to move on to some other issues at this point in time. That's just my opinion.
That's a good point. Yeah, David?
I guess I need a little clarification. Would this be competing for funds for things such as acquisition of right-of-way for the North Junction or any other major projects like that? Because we got some really important projects that we need to be working. And walkable places doesn't come close to the importance of some of the projects that we've got that we're facing. We've still got, we're only on phase 1 of the 235 Kellogg Junction. We've got a ton of things that are critical to the infrastructure around here, and we're talking walkable places.
That, no, it's not competing against that. That, of the 16 applications we received for this funding, North Junction was not one of them.
Can
think that was his
can the
point,
money
though.
be used for right-of-way acquisition or?
Historically, KDOT has not allowed us to use our sub-allocated WAMPO funding for right-of-way acquisition. There's been a few instances where they allowed it. I mean, I can think of one in 10 years. They generally don't allow it for right-of-way, for utility relocation, or for PE. Yes, thank you.
If we don't apply for this money, for this activity, will we be able to use it for anything else? That's what they're all asking.
Well,
This $500,000, if we don't apply for it to do a walkable places cycle again, will it be available for us to do something else with?
yes, the current cycle we're in, we received about $25 million in requests for funding, and this was a part of that.
Yeah, this directly would compete with other projects that are road projects, sure.
And I would add, that's, magically, the total dollar amount that was applied for roughly equals the amount we have to award. We have about $12 million to award, and so over 2 years, that's $24 million, and we're roughly $25 million in applications. So this project is competing against those other 15 that were applied for.
So the applications on file of the 16 cover the bulk of the money allocated, and there's even applied for more than the bulk. Is that, than the,
There's probably a little bit more that's applied for, but it kind of depends on how the years work out and how the exact, we have, it's really close. I'll just say that, it's really close. We haven't gotten into it enough to look at more details.
Christine, respectfully, I think you're hearing that the policy body is questioning this. One more question, is there a member jurisdiction that is promoting or really needs another round of walkable places, is why it's part of the deal, or?
Well, I'll let them speak for themselves if they'd like to. I can say on behalf of our staff, we reached out to all of the sponsors. I think we heard back, so we had 16. We contacted, we heard 8 yeses, 2 nos, and 6 no responses. We didn't get a response from.
Everyone's going to want free money pretty much, and so I go back to, this was extra money that was left over that could be used for something. This was what I consider a great use for it in our body. But for it to preempt that and take away from what could potentially be other projects, I don't think that seems appropriate.
And yeah, and I agree with that, and he also looks, so we're asking for $248,000 for the planning assistant for folks to plan, to help them, the smaller entities, plan projects. And now we're asking for $500,000 for walkability ones, so we're $750,000 of consulting fees that could possibly be in construction or other fees. I mean, I understand the need for walkable and safe walkable paths and this, that, and the other thing. But I think after spending the money we spent last year, and like you say, Troy, I think, there's money to be available that they would apply for, and I would agree with that. But I think we're sometimes spending more money on consultants than we are on construction issues. And like I said, that's $750,000. That adds up. I mean, how much, that's a mile of a path, or more than a mile of a bike or pedestrian path that we could be funding that we're spending on consulting fees. I just think, and I've not been real, quiet about my dislike for spending those monies on consulting fees. I'd much rather see them putting brick and mortar or concrete down or something, and something that that's tangible and we can keep. So, and we had the money because we got the rules changed on us, and we had money we had to spend. Okay. Now I'm opposed to further.
The sense for what the whole body thinks, I wouldn't mind trying to make a motion that would say that this project not be part of the selection and knocked out, but that if there's money left over again, as there was in this case, then it could be used for that purpose. So I don't know how that motion would be worded exactly, but.
Well, I was just asking, and if Austin's here, I mean, this is the director's report where I think we're giving guidance. And
Maybe a
I think our
motion could
guidance
even be-
collectively,
So that you did really great, Troy. A motion would be motion to remove planning walkable places as a consideration for the 2019 TIP, except if there is excess funds left over at the end of the year. PWP will be eligible.
I would make that motion.
I would second it.
Okay.
Clarification, are we talking about funds left over at the end of the year or funds of the $24 million that we get?
This would have been funds of the 24 million.
That's what I'm talking about. Last time we had leftover funds.
And I'm saying that's okay. If that happens again, then yes, we can use that money.
So it's the 24 million total.
Over, not part of any funds that may be not allocated in the 24 million.
Yes. Okay. Did you get that? Okay.
Okay, there was a motion, and who seconded it? Ann? Ann? Okay. Okay, any other discussion about the motion that has been seconded? Being none, the motion and the second, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Being none, that the motion carries. Okay, Christine, you got your guidance?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Chairman.
We also wanted to update you that there will probably be some year-end funding available because we can no longer roll over any balance of the sub-allocated funds. We don't have an exact total yet, but it could be pretty significant in terms of how we get projects developed, I guess, more than anything else, because KDOT does require about a 33-month development project or process for project development. So we're going to be kind of in the same quandary we were in last year, but we're trying to push together some ideas for reimbursements for projects that are are under construction, and we're doing that to the limit that we can. And we're also looking at some ITS projects to improve technology along roadways and to help with signals and those kinds of things that'll make traffic move more efficiently and effectively. But we'll have a better idea probably towards July or August on how much total is there and project ideas. But we are trying to push reimbursements and projects that have been, I guess, are under construction and or have been constructed and need to have some money reimbursed. So we'll have a bit or more of an update probably in July or August.
Okay, and we did, Dan and I, the vice chair, we had an informal meeting with KDOT and the feds earlier, and they might be a little flexible about us accelerating projects or splitting projects at the end of the year. But Phil and staff will be working more closely with KDOT and the feds on that, so.
The last item I have, unless there's any questions on that one, the last item I have is that on June 26th, I think you received some information about a scenario planning workshop that's going to be taking place. The first day will be up in the third floor conference room. And this is sponsored by the Volpe Center of the Federal Highway Administration. We have two peer organizations, Omaha and one in Pocatello, Idaho, are going to be making presentations about how they've used scenario planning and how it's kind of works to the benefit of developing their metropolitan transportation plan. But it's an all-day event, and really encourage you to attend because I think there's going to be a lot of good information that could be beneficial to your communities. We've invited all of the TPP members, the TAC, other MPOs in the state, and the federal government in the state will be sending people down. Rick Backlund will be making some comments, the regional administrator. So really encourage you to attend. Again, it's the Tuesday, the 26th. And hope you can make it.
Thanks, Phil. I would reemphasize that. Rick had talked about that too, having these other MPOs represented to say what they kind of do with their stuff. It might be scheduled to be a little part of a day, but I think if you had your representatives or anybody could make it, if you can't make it as a policy body member, maybe you send parts of your organization to attend. So I think there'll be some good handouts, some good stories, some good workshop.
Yes. That's all I have.
Okay. At this time, we go to the public comment opportunity. Anybody from the public like to address the policy body? Okay. Being none, move to the next one, planning considerations. We don't have any, do we? No.
Oh, yeah. No, you don't have.
No. All right, new business, number 5, the MTP proposed approach from Chris Upchurch.
Thank you. So I'm here today to talk to you about the approach that staff is proposing for us to use to update our metropolitan transportation plan. The MTP is the opportunity for us to ask the question, what sort of future do we want for transportation in our region? It's a chance for us to address these trends that we've been talking about for the past couple of years and decide how we want to respond to those trends. Now, this is a follow-up. We talked at the workshop a few months ago about the sort of overall vision for the MTP development. We were talking last month about some decision points when you wanted us to come to you and for specific decisions on how the MTP is going to go. What this really does is take this to the next level and in a little more detail, and also ask you for your approval. Staff are looking for the green light to kick off this process and actually get going on this. So the goals for our proposed approach, we really want the policy body in particular to have ownership of this MTP. We want you to be involved from the very beginning and have your buy-in in the process. We want participation, not just from the policy body, but also from the TAC, from our member jurisdictions and other stakeholders. And we want to make sure this is a process that's open to all of our member jurisdictions. This is something where it's important to get input from every member jurisdiction, from everyone in the entire Wampo region. So when we talked a couple of months ago at the workshop, we talked about the MTP in terms of these 3 broad phases: the vision, goals, and investment strategy, project selection, and then the final public engagement and adoption. What I'm going to do today is sort of go one level deeper and break each of these down into a couple of steps, and also show how these link up with the decision points that we talked about last month. So the first phase here is going to be devoted to gathering input from stakeholders and members of the public. Really the key question here is that what sort of future do we want for our region? Now, the first step in this process is going to be to establish a Plan Advisory Committee, or PAC. This is going to be the policy body's primary advisory group in terms of developing this plan. They're the ones that are going to work with staff to develop the plan and vet stuff before it comes to the policy body. We're looking at a membership that would include a mix of policy body members, members from the TAC, and members from other stakeholders. And we would start putting that together this month, assuming we get your approval today. And while that would be, widely representative of the Wampo region, we also want to reach out beyond that to other stakeholders and members of the public. So the other part of this initial step is broad public engagement. Go out to lots of different people, lots of different groups. Get their opinions on what we need in terms of transportation in this region. Now, once we get that input, the PAC is going to help staff forge that into a vision for the MTP, vision for transportation in our region, and a series of outcome statements. So these will sort of set the direction for the MTP at a high level. The public engagement will continue. We will take these vision and outcomes out to the public and let them know what we turned their input into. And this will also include our first decision point, which is the policy body approving those vision and outcomes. And finally, the third step of this first phase is the financial outlook. You can't talk about transportation without talking about money. We were just doing that earlier. And really, there are 2 questions here. One is, how much money are we going to have to spend? So staff will work with KDOT and USDOT and our member jurisdictions to compile a financial outlook, what we're planning on spending in transportation in our region over the next 20 years. The other half of this is deciding where we want to spend that money. And that will include developing an investment strategy that sort of translate these high-level vision and outcomes into a direction that we want our spending to go. So that rounds out the first phase there. A couple more decision points. We'll be asking the policy body to approve the structure of the WAMPO funded project list, sign off on those estimates of future funding, and approve the investment strategy. Second phase, project selection. This is where we turn the high-level stuff, the vision, outcomes, and investment strategy, into actual projects. This will include developing the project selection process and criteria, saying how we're going to choose the projects that we want to provide WAMPO funding to. The next step, which we've already talked about a bit today, is the call for projects. This will, assuming it's approved as part of the TIP, will include that support for member jurisdictions in developing their projects, and the project selection process, where our selection committee will actually go through and assemble the candidate lists of projects. And then the last phase here is documenting the plan. Now, I should emphasize that staff will be working throughout this entire process to write the plan document, but this is really when we start hammering it into the final draft. We'll also do some more public outreach at this phase, letting them know, give their opinions on the projects and that sort of thing. And we'll do some of the required analysis that we have to do to meet federal requirements, analysis of things like environmental justice and financial constraint, make sure we have enough money to pay for all of these projects. So that'll be the project selection phase. That'll basically be the better part of 2019. And the last phase here is our final public engagement and the adoption of the plan. So public engagement is sort of something that is threaded throughout this whole process, but towards the end here, we'll make a big push in early 2020 to take the completed draft plan out to all of our member jurisdictions and all of these stakeholders that we've been talking to, let them know that this was the outcome of this process and give them a chance to give their final opinions. And then finally, we will get to our last decision point where the policy body will be asked to approve the final MTP document and make this official. So this is a pretty long process, pretty big project, and this is how staff are planning to tackle it. I'm happy to take any questions that the policy body might have on this.
Chris, yeah, it goes a long way, but a couple of thoughts. Back on your step one, the initial public engagement. A lot of, especially in the Wichita, we're going through a lot of public engagements on Wichita or Project Wichita and blah, 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 Wichita. And so how do we what are you going to do to get the message out for public input? This is just about transportation. What do you put it on the web, or what are we supposed, how are you going to get the public engaged?
It is a challenge, and I'm sorry Tricia isn't here today because I could toss her this hot potato.
Okay.
And I'll add to that challenge, we also will have public engagement for several other things for WAMPO going on at the same time. We'll be asking for public input on our new TIP that we were just discussing, some public input on the scenario planning process that we were talking about, and I'm sure there's something else that I'm forgetting that Tricia could tell you about. So our idea here is to use a unified public engagement process for all of the WAMPO stuff. And like you said, to really lean hard on the transportation elements of this. We would like to work with some of the other organizations that are doing public engagement now. I know I saw that one of Project Wichita's sort of outcomes of their initial public engagement was a transportation element to that. We also have some of our sort of sister organizations like BRAG that have some transportation interests as well. And we'd like to work with them and really try and push the transportation angle and get people's opinions.
Would this be something that our policy body members could take back to their various city councils and say, this needs to be an agenda item, and then a quick presentation?
And certainly as one aspect of this, we'd be more than happy to speak with member jurisdictions, city councils or county commissions, and take this roadshow, to your organizations. In addition to reaching out to all sorts of other stakeholders. So there'll definitely be a role for the policy body members in this, in sort of opening up particular venues for WAMPO to go out and solicit public input.
Well, if you want to get all that done in July and August, who's the point person to contact each member jurisdiction to say we need to be on an agenda?
This will be a cooperative effort between me and Tricia.
Okay. So we're all going to trust that you're going to contact our agenda makers and get
Yep.
on the agenda. Okay. Is that cool with policy body? I think that's as much as we can help support to get the message out for public input. If they choose to do so, fine.
One of the things that we're trying to do a little bit differently too, interrupt Chris a second here.
Please.
Instead of just going out and saying, here's the MTP, you'll love it, we're trying to get ownership from each individual group by having kind of participatory, like they had dot exercise for picking priorities for the scenario planning. And we'd like to try to do other things like that in terms of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. If you've ever seen Move 2040, the document, it's about 400 pages. I can tell you that nobody's going to read 400 pages. So we're trying to make this more, I guess, easily to digest and easier to understand by giving you ownership right off the bat and giving you what you'd like to see and where you think we need to be in the next 20 years rather than here it is, you'll love it. We're just not going to do that again.
And if you're going to take this, I mean, your item 3, I assume you mean January of 19.
Oh, yes, January 19, yes.
And later on your investment, your decision point investment strategy, you've got January 18 there.
Yep.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay. So this is an action item that we need to approve. I also, I believe I understand, and Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, this is kind of a process that KDOT and the feds, it's not a great project, a process that we may agree on. We may want it faster or different, but I think it mirrors what the states and the Fed.
We have to meet certain criteria and certain guidelines in order to get this. What's the content of the MTP is ours, but we have to meet certain rules and regulations and criteria that the state and Fed set up. So we'd like to try a little bit something differently, or at least I would, to say, let's put project selection in a more manageable bands, because I don't think anybody in the room can say what they want to build 20 years from now. We'd like to break it into more like 5-year planning eras to where it's a priority for you, and it evolves into era number 2 and era number 3, and it just keeps moving to where it's more manageable. You may have something that comes up 6-7 years ago that you didn't foresee in the first band, and we want you to be able to, and again, that has to be approved by the state and the feds, but we'd like for you to be able to move those projects up, but at the same time, something might have to move down. So we'd like to make it, again, your document that you can see how it fits with your needs and what you think is important in your community, rather than just, here's a 20-year plan, we think it's going to work, when nobody can vision out 20 years as to what's going to change.
So a motion would be that we approve these performance targets and schedule? Or do we have, is this an item?
To approve the proposed approach.
Proposed approach. Okay, thanks for the. So any other discussion, questions? Yeah, Kelly? Okay, Kelly makes the motion to approve the proposed approach. Is there a second? Dan, second. Thank you. Any other discussion? Being none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Chris. Okay, committee reports and partnership status. We did have an executive committee. I just would ask the policy body that at the end of this meeting, which shouldn't take too long, we were going to ask for a 10, maybe 15-minute executive session. 10, okay? We just need 10 minutes if y'all can keep that. But and part of our executive executive committee meeting, we discussed a little bit about what we talked about a minute ago with Dan. You were out about working closely with KDOT on end of year deobligated funds and balances, and how can we work together. And KDOT was very receptive to that, Dan, right? With wanting to, question is, how do we help squeeze that 33-month if we have a chance and accelerate projects, put them towards what Commissioner Dennis was talking about, towards brick and mortar and project stuff. So we had a good discussion about that. And the other stuff will be in executive session. So that's as much as the executive committee. The TAC, Tom's not here, can you update the TAC report?
We had an update on the cost benefit analysis that we've been talking about, or the return on investment for the original term. And our motion was made to appoint a subcommittee to address it further. The subcommittee met, and it was determined that it was going to be really difficult to come up with criteria that we could use to evaluate projects at this time, that maybe we needed more time to look at it. Jim Weber gave us some information that they looked at for stormwater utility, right, Jim? And we're looking at that, but right now it looks like the return on investment or cost benefit analysis is going to be pretty difficult to put in place, especially for this next time frame. That was the only item.
Okay. Any questions for Phil on that? Okay, moving on. Kansas Department of Transportation, Mr. Hine. God, you're in the news all the time. You're on TV.
I'm tired of myself. Really, the big project we have is I-235 and US 54, but there's always something happening. Luckily, last Monday, we did reopen Maple to all 4 lanes underneath I-235, which gives people a good way other than US 54 in that area. And we encourage people to try Maple. The timing on the lights has been executed and functioned very well. So give that a try.
Was that you guys timing, or do you coordinate with the city on that?
We coordinate with the city on that.
Okay.
And I've driven it many times, and I've driven it most successfully from the west to the east, going all the way to downtown without being stopped. So it's amazing. It's true.
Fake news,
It
fake
can't happen.
news.
It can happen. And one of the reasons the push to get Maple back open was so that we could close more things at the actual interchange, which we did on Monday. On Monday, eastbound US 54 went to 2 lanes instead of 3 from Dugan to West Street to do quite a few things. Expand the bridge over the big ditch, work on some signs, prepare the new ramp for eastbound US 54 to northbound I-235, which won't be finished until fall, but gives us that opportunity to go ahead and make that transition to it. Today, which is June 12th, we also closed the westbound US 54 ramp to northbound I-235 to rebuild that one. And that one will also take a number of months to rebuild. So good things, bad things.
Is there a alternate ramp, or did you close that whole thing?
Well, of course, we have alternate ways to get you around.
Right.
If you're westbound on US 54 and you want to go northbound 235, it's a little bit messy. You got to go to southbound down to K42, do a couple of lefts, and get on northbound I-235, and you're there.
Hey. I think I'll stay this side of the river.
It can be done, East Siders. It can be done.
Well, Troy wanted me to ask you these questions.
That's very important for Andover.
Andover needs to know this. Okay.
That's,
Hey, a quick question on signage. Are you the person, meaning, I know that National Center for Aviation Training, NCAT, on 96, the name has changed to WSU Tech. And is that something, I think Sherry said that come through your
we
group?
have a signing engineer in Topeka, so we will alert him to some need. Is that what you are implying?
Yeah, I
We have
just didn't
some
know. You're,
changes
so
to
you're
make.
not really aware of it? You're not?
No, I'm not.
The sign?
No.
Okay. All right.
Potential end date for, in front of,
On the East Kellogg projects, I talked to them today. They're going to be switching traffic on Greenwich to the new part, the new constructed Greenwich. So we're going to be another number of months just the way it is right now, except that we're on the old pavement right now.
Like
So-
2020 it'll be done, or
I couldn't get
I
a,
keep getting asked that all the time. When I'm like, well, just use it.
however long you couldn't make that left into that shopping center, well, double that now. Because we're entering the next phase where it'll be the same way. And there won't be that opportunity. Traffic will look the same, you'll just be on new pavement.
Corey, the sign says one way through December. I travel that almost every day.
All right. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Mike's not here, and Rick's not here, unless somebody, nope. So we'll move on and to other business, and this is be where we want to make a proposal for an executive session. And if you tell me the motion, council, I'll make it.
Yes, sir. Motion to go into executive session for 10 minutes to discuss matters related to the actions of non-elected WAMPO personnel pursuant to the discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel, justification for executive sessions under the Kansas Open Meetings Act, KSA 754319, Subpart B, Subpart 1, and to invite in Executive Director Phil Nelson and WAMPO Attorney Austin Parker. The open meeting will resume in the WAMPO meeting room at 4:13 p.m.
Second?
One quick question.
Yes.
My alternate delegate is here. Can he stay or does he need to leave?
You can stay. He's
can
absolutely
stay.
welcome.
Oh, he left, so.
Well, you can ask him to come, ask him to come back if he wants.
You can grab him in. That's fine. Motion made and seconded. So.
Second.
Motion seconded. Any questions? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Okay, we are now in executive session.